Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckold dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode number, I believe, 17 of The Lumber Word. Gregg Riley, Sitka USA, Matt Beamer, and we have a guest, Chris Tatge from DC Materials. We'll start right off by introducing Chris. Chris is the president of DC Materials, one of the largest turnkey framers, if not the largest, in Wisconsin. Chris is also the past president of the National Framers Council. He's on the SBCA board. Chris and I, that's where we had a lot of contact through the SBCA, which is a great organization. And if you're not in it, you should check into that. And kind of like the Matt Damon 2011 movie, We Bought a Zoo, Chris built a lumberyard. So I think that that's pretty interesting for a lot of reasons, Chris. And I didn't do enough justice introducing you because you have a great story. Starting out with your father framing, tell us a little bit about where you started and where you've ended up at this point.
Started framing out of high school, 17 years old. Didn't do great in traditional learning situations, but when I started framing, I was good at it, and I was really good at it, and I was better than everyone else. So by the time I was 20, I had a contract to frame 26 houses over the course of a year, my own crew, my own small company. And I did framing labor only for about 20 years. And in Wisconsin, sort of the pinnacle of success for framers was always sort of having your own multifamily framing crew, 10 to 20 guys, building 4-story apartment buildings and keeping the money that's left over after you paid everyone else, right? Got involved with the National Framers Council in 2014, and I met guys I would describe as professional framing contractors, turnkey guys who were real businessmen who had office jobs. And I thought, well, this is new. I want to learn more about this. So got a lot of great mentors through my relationships at the Framers Council. Started learning about lumber, learning how to buy lumber. Wisconsin traditionally is a two-step market. So you've got a general contractor who needs an apartment building. He's going to take a labor-only framing contractor, purchase from them, and then he's going to deal with a lumberyard who's buying panels and trusses and loose and selling that as a separate contract to the GC. So to sort of work my way into that, it took me about a year and a half of sort of pitching my vision to vendors in Wisconsin and talking them into selling me. And in 2019, we sold our first lumber package. Since then, we've grown 1,100%. We were named the 539th fastest growing company in America recently by Inc. magazine. And we're in the process of building our own lumberyard right now. So it's been a fun ride.
Chris, I was writing something down here when you said that. What was your biggest eye-opening experience from just doing the framing to all of a sudden? What was your biggest surprise when you started looking at buying your own lumber packages?
Oh yeah, there were a lot of surprises. Sort of one of the inflection points for me. I was at a Framers Council event and talking to a guy named Bruce Jones. If you're in Pennsylvania, you know Bruce Jones, great guy.
Yeah. And
he had a few drinks and he started bragging to me that he had bought 3 truckloads of OSB for $4 a sheet. So I went on Menards.com app and looked it up, and it was selling retail for like $9 a sheet. And I thought, wow, I'm really missing out on things here. That was when I decided I need to learn a lot more and really get into this and commit to it. Some of the surprises along the way, it's been interesting starting to understand the supply chain as far as everybody has their territory, everybody has their place where they work. The people who are willing to work with me, the people who don't want to work with me, people who feel threatened by what I'm doing. There's people who are very interested in doing something new. All kinds of attitudes out there. There's people who add value in a lot of different ways that I didn't expect. And there's people who just don't add value at all, right? And I found those guys are the ones who are willing to work hard against you. So it's been fun. I and it's a little bit preachy, but there's a lot of different parts of the country that are turnkey framers. And I think there are framers out there who are happy to get a lumber package from a jobber and take that to site and get a little more margin on it and be mostly hands off. There's turnkey framers who want to be very involved, understand lumber markets, market trends, sell on what they think is going to happen. I think there's more and more guys who are looking at the contract and getting involved and starting to understand that more.
When you say the contract, you mean the CME contract, right?
Yeah. Yep. I recently opened an account, I think 3 months ago, doing a lot more speculating, doing all speculating right now and no hedging. But I'm getting statements every morning and I'm reading them and understanding them and asking more questions to learn more and more. So,
Chris, just get a better understanding is, we had a little bit of conversation yesterday, and yes, we talked about the areas of the country that, are really our turnkey framers, and so having said that, you have a physical location, you bring in bulk quantity, and then you reship out to your respective jobs.
Yeah, there's a few ways that I buy jobs, and it's all, I work with jobbers, so I work with Shelter Products a lot. There's the other guys out there, Idapac, Matthews. In the past, I've always relied on them to do my price risk management. But as I sort of opened up a location and started to hold inventory, I'll buy a truck here or there when I feel like it's the right time. And if you're paying attention, I think it's generally pretty easy at the volume that I'm doing to make good decisions. And so just building out inventory, if I have a job going, getting a mixed load out of a reload that's 4 hours away works fine. But sometimes I'll have guys who call me and they need a unit of 2x6 like in 2 hours. And so,
it's like today you've got somebody, they're gonna start a job in March, April. It's going to be a 6-month build out.
Yep.
How are you handling that today?
Right now I'm getting job quotes from jobbers.
Okay, so you're using jobbers on that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm using jobbers on that. I'm using jobbers for most of the work, the business that I'm doing.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think they've got a great place as far as the supply chain goes, helping with cash flow for a lot of turnkey guys, right? And the price risk management side, which really a lot of framers don't have time for. Guys who are out there wearing tool belts and pounding nails, they don't have time to understand any of that and get into that.
I have a question for you, Chris. When you've talked about your exponential growth here during the pandemic, do you feel like your business model helped you during the supply crunch?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have any significant inventory on the ground. I mean, when the opportunity came and prices dropped, I could sell very quickly and I could wrap up contracts very quickly, whereas my competitors had to average down, and I didn't have to think about that at all. I think I've gotten into lumber in 2019. Most of lumber works on this 100-year-old wisdom, right? Lean by Halloween kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think I had a weird advantage that I wasn't held back by any of that. I didn't have any expectations, right? And so all the information I got was new information. I didn't have any backdrop to compare that against. It was a fun time to be learning lumber, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Stressful. It's a stressful time.
Yeah. Chris, tell me a little bit about what what the multifamily segment looks like. I mean, in the upper Midwest for 2024, and you've got some insight into what it looks like nationally. That'd be great to share also.
Yeah, Ashley mentioned we're the largest framing contractor in Wisconsin, and we're all multifamily. We don't do any single family. Ever since interest rates started going up, I'm seeing this interesting ebb and flow of multifamily projects. So I guess you call it my tower crane index. I rent self-erecting tower cranes for my jobs, and the number of tower cranes I have out on rent, sort of gives a good light on how much work I've got going. 6 months ago, I had one tower crane out on rent. 9 months ago, I had four. 2 months ago, I had five, and right now I have one. And so what I've seen from developers is the old lemmings thing is they're kind of all going at the same time when they feel good about the direction the Fed's going. If they think they're going to be able to open a construction loan and have that same rate a year from now, they get the warm fuzzies about that, then they're going with projects. And so I had 500,000 square feet under construction 2 months ago. I've got 70,000 square feet right now. I've got nothing in January, February, March, but I've got 1.2 million square feet in verbal commitments from general contractors who are waiting on developers to sign contracts with them. And I think generally speaking in the Midwest, there's not a lot of work over the winter. I get a lot of phone calls from subcontractors who are looking to stay busy. So that's kind of the outlook here. Generally, there's a bit of a scramble for multifamily jobs nationally as well. The stuff that's starting in the next 6 months is a real hot item, and they're getting really premium pricing from everybody just because the timing works out. I also think that the people who are paying attention, we're super aware that housing's underbuilt. I think multifamily is the best short-term solution, and we all know that it's maybe going to be slow for a few months, but it's not going to be slow for a long time.
Do you feel like the most recent economic news that's been coming out in the last week or two is beneficial to your business going into the first half of 2024, or neutral or negative?
I think it's beneficial. Yeah, I think inflation sort of, looking at inflation and it being under control and everybody sort of parlaying that into thinking that Jerome Powell's going to stay steady on interest rates is a good thing.
Yeah, it was interesting as you're talking about the outlook for business. Ashley and I were at a conference last week, and the economist that spoke highlighted that there's currently a record number of multifamily units under construction. Mm-hmm. And, I feel like that's kind of been like one of the positive underlying for the market over the last little while, because there's just so much ongoing business. Mm-hmm. And he was forecasting that a 25% decrease in multifamily starts next year. Mm-hmm. Seems like a lot with the backdrop of, like, we're talking about the need for housing. But his point was, and this may be one of the things that's feeding into your people are waiting on contracts to be signed, is that they're starting to have issues with financing. Mm-hmm. From the regional banks. Rents are falling, and with the higher rates, there's things that are starting to be difficult to pencil out.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely way more jobs out there right now than there is cash. And yeah, pro formas are not looking good. I think commercial real estate, multifamily, I think they're okay with a lot lower cap rates than they were 2 years ago. I really feel like the hinge-pin is they want interest rates to be the same when they close their construction loans and wrap them up. It's when they open those construction loans. So we're going to be at 7%.
The same or lower.
The same or lower. Yeah.
Time frame is that, Chris? I mean, you talk about that and you understand, but
it's about a year.
Doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about a year to turn.
It's not like buying a house where you call your mortgage broker and then 3 days later you lock in the rate.
No, Matt, that's a good point. The general public and even a lot of people that sell lumber don't understand that.
Yeah. Most people in our business don't really understand the way apartment business is done. And this is why I asked you the question at the very beginning about how your business model was beneficial or not beneficial during the pandemic. During the pandemic, Hampton, a sawmill, was getting all kinds of phone calls from actual builders and developers going, "Hey, can you give us numbers on lumber?" Because their traditional partners had abandoned that. They did not want to take the risk on the forward pricing, and they had gotten creamed on some of the stuff they'd already priced in the first half of 2021. So it was interesting to find out, how the business is actually done. And really a lot of it comes down to what Gregg is asking you questions, and what you're talking about is money.
Mhm.
Who's financing the project? Well, the banks are. Most of these are not self-financed projects, and they're multi-million-dollar projects. We're not talking about like a $300,000 first-time family home. These are,
Mhm.
these are multi-million-dollar projects. So a lot
Absolutely.
of people in our business don't understand that, and hopefully they do now.
And it's a math decision on whether or not they build these things. That's it. It's a business decision. It's not based on a need. It's just, does the math work?
So,
Period.
Chris, some part of this $1.5 million, quote unquote, committed.
Mhm.
How often are you having to requote the lumber packages for that? Or are you having to requote the lumber packages for that?
Yeah, I've requoted some recently. It depends on where the GC is at with the developer in the process. I'm trying to bring everything that I can to the table.
How has your ability to get labor been the last 3 years?
Mine's good. We've got our own carpenters. We also use subcontractors, but I treat those guys really well. And a little bit of my secret sauce is I like to make money on the lumber, and I like to pay framers for the work that they do, and I pay them really well. And I don't make a lot of money on the labor side of things. I make sure those guys get paid well. I pay site managers. I pay laborers to clean. I pay equipment guys, and that's a big part of my pitch and my sell is when I build a building, I can go to the table and tell a general contractor it'll be 1 week for walls, 1 week for floor, every single time, and I pay for it with my guys. Right, I make sure that they're successful.
Yeah, well, that's your competitive advantage is that, because you're doing turnkey,
Mhm.
you don't have to just make a margin on your labor
Mhm.
because you have the lumber also, and being able to overpay your guys a little bit versus the market. You've got higher quality people, more reliable people. Yep.
Absolutely.
Do you feel
Sorry,
like
Matt, go ahead.
rents? I just was going to ask him about rents because we touched on that for a second.
Sure.
There's some markets in Florida, Texas. There might be some, hell, even Portland might have this, but where rents have dropped from their highs. But
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a national trend, if it's everywhere, or if it's just some places. Can you touch on that?
I pay attention to rents in Madison, and that always makes me feel good because rents.
Well, it's a college town, so rent never goes down in a college town, right?
I don't know, Chris. I don't know how it was a rough weekend up in Madtown though, with the Wildcats in town, huh?
Oh, they're the juggernaut of the Midwest.
It's like when the Wildcats beat the Badgers in Madison. I mean, it's like the world's turned upside down, right?
The Northwestern.
Yeah. Ash, we were talking before about, Chris mentioned it, and I commend you for opening a futures account. You made a statement is that you're speculating.
Yeah.
Are you really speculating? I mean, are you short lumber to a job, and if you're long futures, then you're not really speculating, you're hedging.
Sure.
You may be hedge-elating.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. Yeah. I've got some great guys who've been around for a long time who are sort of letting me ride on their coattails for a lot of trades. And so it's been super helpful. Yeah.
Ash, exciting day today. November futures expiring here in about a half an hour.
Yeah, generally, isn't that the most fun time to be long or short something in the last half hour?
Have you ever done that before? I did it on accident one time. I was long, I think it was the September contract, and I was long like 10 contracts, and I'd forgotten about it. I had my truck, I got in a fender bender, so I was at Allstate at a claims place getting it fixed, and all of a sudden my phone just starts blowing up, and I'm sitting here talking to this claims guy and all this stuff. I'm totally distracted. And I finally, about the third time I get this call, I answered it. It was Paul Court. He's like, "Hey, Beamer, you still got these 10 long? You got like 5 minutes to get out of them." I'm like, "Oh yeah, just buy them back." I'm sorry. I got so lucky. I could have gotten crushed on that.
Always better lucky than good, Matt. I mean, one of the things that was interesting is, going in, we were last week when we were in Columbus, and the board was carrying a pretty good premium to cash, really right up until yesterday. And then it really went, to a pretty decent sized discount. There's been a fair amount of EFPing going on, which good to see. And, like we said last week after meeting with the Merc is, there's been no deliveries in the new contract. And if that continues, that's going to be a real, that just shows how what a good job they did in structuring the contract.
Yeah, Greg. So we can kind of like push forward and talk a little bit about this week, what happened in lumber. I mean, we came back from the Columbus show last week thinking people were a little bit more positive on lumber than they were over the past few months. And I mean, print came out today, was up a little bit on some of the items. We saw, I know in the spruce items, 2x4, 9-footers, pretty strong still moving forward. And we had a lot of inquiry on that this morning, sold some cars of that. And, I had one call with one guy in the Midwest today asking him to buy some 104s. And his comment was, I have my job sold a lot cheaper. I've got to buy $30 underneath that. Right. So I'm thinking there's been a lot of people that are still in that camp of, his other comment was, I didn't think there'd be a lot of buying going into the end of the year.
I think,
look at the board.
And I know I've said this, is that I didn't realize how oversold and how short the market really was. What I'm trying to put my finger in the air right now is how much of that have we satisfied? To your point, Chris, is I quote a ton of multifamily jobs, and in the last week, I've had all of these things, December, January, February starts have all of a sudden come across my desk, kind of the little bit of strength I think has flushed some of that business out.
Look at the board here, man. It's up $30 today on from yesterday's close. We went from 490 to 520. Yeah, live. I'm real time. I opened up my program while you were talking. So we went from 489.50 close yesterday to 520 right now. It kind of blows me away that, I mean, I checked with a couple sawmills yesterday to see what I could do some expits for, and it was stunningly cheap based on that 490 number.
Yeah.
And even today, even up 30, it's still not a bad deal. So,
well, the real deal, Matt, is the spread traded out to $50 yesterday.
I know, I couldn't believe it. It went from 30 to 25 to 50, and now it's back down to 18.
Right,
which is normal.
So, just goes to show you, lots of opportunity in the market. People always ask me, I go, you know what? You don't look at the market and try and interpret what it means for. Just look at it as like, what can it do for you, right?
Well, let's look at it, instead of looking at it as a 24-hour window, look at it as a 1-month window or a 2-month window. Start taking a bigger, wider view of it. When you go into, if you've been listening to us for the last few weeks, you would know that mills are curtailing. The math doesn't work. We're going into the lowest production time of the year. Inventories are low. People have business coming up in the next year, and that these job quotes have been floating around, and they're starting to get put. And so there's no mystery as to which direction the market wants to go, right? Somebody asked me 3 weeks ago if I had $1 to bet if the market was going to go up or down. I said, I'd bet $10 it's going to go up. I mean, it's not hard to read the tea leaves if you just start looking at all the realities that are right in front of you. And then also, there's a big part of our business, which people just ignore half the time. It's called time of year, right? Go get yourself one of those random lengths charts or a futures chart and just print it out and put it on your desk. Look at the time of year that you're in and pay attention. Don't fight it. Just realize it's data that's been around for a long time.
That's been an interesting revelation for me, is when I'm looking at jobs now that are going to start in July, August, just being able to look at what are the times a year that I'm going to have opportunities between now and then. It really helps guide my decisions, right?
Yeah, and if you don't have a disruption like 2021, 2022 with the supply chain, it's pretty safe to assume that between December 1st and July 1st, you're going to have a couple of spot buy opportunities that are going to make you some money.
Hey, Chris, with your with the new facility you're putting in, and you made the comment of, and we made the comment of how we're underbuilt. And I can make the argument we're underbuilt because we're still doing an inordinate amount of homes the old fashioned way, not off-site construction, panelizing, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You must have some type of thought process of, you're young, innovative. Like, what's the thought process on building a panel and truss plant at some point?
I've got a really great vendor, Automated Products, up in Marshfield. John Dees has been a great partner. If I say jump, they ask how high. And that's what has brought both of our companies a lot of success. Offsite, I think there's been buzz there for 5 years, right? And you've got a lot of venture capital going into, volumetric and all these other neat things. I always kind of go back to we've been building buildings for a long time. And every day we go out on the job site and we try to find a way to do it a little faster, a little bit better, right? So one of the things, there's a few things we're doing. I think the move to supply housing better, more efficiently, cheaper is going to be extremely incremental. And I think all the offsite guys are kind of pushing us there. But I think it's steps like we're pre-building our stair cassettes at our facility now. We're pre-building our exterior decks. And there's a few framers around the country who are doing that. And I'm obviously biased, but if you look at the guys who've really delivered real good value, the component manufacturers, their backgrounds are in framing contracting. Buddy Rainey down in Florida, Ryan Moline, also in Florida. I think the companies that are doing off-site to site delivery best started out as framers. It's preachy. I think it's a 20-year kind of a cycle, and not like, I think there's a lot of people who are looking for some kind of lightning in a bottle or easy plug-on solution. You've got this huge workforce. If you want us to do things better and more efficiently, it's got to adapt. You've got to listen to the framers. So
good point.
Yeah,
Chris. I mean, what a great to have you, and nice to get a chance to meet you, and really good info. That's for sure.
I spent 20 years as sort of this framer with blinders on, just looking at what I had to build during the day. One of the great joys of what I do now is going to like Montreal Wood Conference. I was at a real estate conference 2 weeks ago in San Diego, sort of having a fuller understanding of the entire process of how people have places to live. It's been a lot of fun learning about lumber and learning about all the other parts and pieces that affect what I do.
So Chris, just to conclude, what if you had some framers that will listen to this and they're not actively involved in their own lumber spend right now, and are interested in it, what's a bit of advice you give them to start learning about it?
Boy, first one's call me.
Okay.
Mentoring is a passion of mine. I love it. I was on the phone a week ago with a framer from Colorado who, a lot of our story, there's a lot of alignment there. Get involved with the National Framers Council. If you want to be in a room with 50 framing contractors who are really successful and willing to share advice freely, it's pretty easy to spend a few bucks on a membership and travel to meet us. Find people who have aligned interests with you. I buy a lot of lumber from Tim Aspinwall, Shelter Products. Tim reached out to me 4 years ago, and I didn't know really anything about lumber. And he said, "Hey, let me help you. Let me guide you. I'll give you all the advice that you need. Call me with any questions." And the upside for Tim, of course, was that he got a new customer. He's going to win on the sale, and I'm going to win with him coaching me, right? And so hook up with people who have a financial interest in your success, right?
Yeah, great advice. And Tim's a great guy. He let me tag along with him quite a bit down in Indy this year. So they're just a great group of people.
Absolutely.
All right, gents, that kind of concludes episode 17 of the Lumber Word. We'll look forward to having some guests in the following weeks. And Chris, thank you again.
We're off next week. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Can't wait.
Huh?
I said, I can't wait. Turkey's in the fridge, baby.
All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll look forward to talking soon.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.